much for making the time to speak to us today. First of all, are you in contact with people who work at the prison? How are people there and how are the officers who have been injured?
I am, and my thoughts are with the injured staff and their families, and our colleagues at Franklin this morning are going into work absolutely traumatised by this sequence of events. The latest from the hospital is they are stable. You know, they're being treated well. Unfortunately, one of them has a punctured lung, so it looks like it's going to be a long process, the road to recovery, but we will fully support them as they go through that process.
Mark, are we clear at this point as to exactly what happened here? We're reporting that hot cooking oil was thrown at the guards first and then they were stabbed with an implement. Are we clear what kind of implement was used?
Yes, so it's our intelligence to suggest that some sort of improvised knives were made out of possibly a baking tray that was kept on that unit. So he's fashioned knives out of that, and once he's subdued the staff with the hot oil, he's proceeded to slash and stab them. So they've got a variety of injuries, including stab wounds, slash wounds, and third-degree burns. So a really serious incident. And we came so close to a murder of a prison officer just because they were carrying out their duties. These separation centres hold the most violent and the worst threat to national security when it comes to terrorist offenders. And we're allowing them the freedoms and privileges of everybody else on normal location. That has to change, along with the protections that prison staff are afforded on duty. And we've been calling for several years now for stab-proof vests to be issued to staff on the front line, but it's being consistently denied. That has to change, and we'll be seeking an urgent meeting with the Secretary of State for Justice, Shabana Mahmood, to put that case to her.
OK, look, there's a couple of bits from that answer there, Mark, that I want to pick up. But first, just a comment as to these stab-proof stab vests that prison officers, you've been calling for prison officers to be given. Why? You would have thought that they would be standard issue by this point, but no.
No, and we've sourced some stab-proof vests, which are very professional, and they don't look anything different than a prison officer's uniform. But the constant reply from our employer, it takes some working out, really, because what they say is we don't want to issue staff with stab-proof vests because it looks too militaristic and it might intimidate prisoners. Now, we're dealing with murderers, armed robbers, major criminals and terrorists, and they're worried about us intimidating them because of the uniform we wear. Staff safety is paramount. That should be not even in the thought process. We need to change things, and we need to protect staff and make sure they feel competent and confident on duty, that their employer actually cares for their welfare. Things have to change.
Yeah, Mark, look, you mentioned as well this happened in a separation centre. Just make it clear for our viewers exactly what that part of HMP Franklin is and why these sort of separation centres exist.
So separation centres were brought in after the Akerson review of terrorism in prisons. There are 3 around the country, Franklin being one of them. It's very difficult to actually place someone in a separation centre because of the process you have to go through. And they are for the most prolific, high-profile terrorist offenders who are that influential that they radicalise other prisoners, Abedi being one of them. And what's appalling to me is they are allowed the freedoms and privileges that people on normal location enjoy, and they're allowed access to cooking facilities and the resources to fashion weapons to attack staff. That has to cease with immediate effect. And we need a real hard look at separation centres and what sort of regime we need to implement now after this attack. As far as I'm concerned, separation centres are there for one reason and one reason alone: to control and contain the most prolific and the biggest threat and the most serious terrorist offenders that the system holds. That's all we need to do. Give them the basic entitlements, control them and contain them. Nothing else.
Mark, you'll know that this, of course, is where it rubs up against the tension, isn't it? That you'll want these individuals who are inside at some point to be rehabilitated and possibly at some point, some of them, to be released, which is why I understand, I presume, that these separation centres have these facilities so they can live something of a normal life inside. But what you're saying now, after this particular incident and other incidents, I guess, that have got close to this, that these separation centres really need to be sort of zero tolerance. There's no chance that these people can have access to anything that sort of resembles normal life.
I think we need an honest and open and sensible conversation about the type of prisoner we house in separation centres. You will not change their ideology. And this incident confirms that the ideology is such that they are determined to continue with their atrocities, even though they're incarcerated, simply because people do not agree with the way they think.
Okay, Mark Fairhurst, Chair of the Prison Officers Association. Appreciate your time. All the best to your colleagues, Mark, and speak again. All the best. Thanks, Mark.